Let's go ahead and launch Unreal Engine 5. Once you have launched the engine, this window will appear. Then launch Unreal Engine 5.
The problem with having a 27-inch monitor.
Once you have launched the engine, this window will appear. So here you can open up your recent projects, but right now we're creating a whole new project, a whole new game. So clicking here on the Games tab, you can also see in Unreal Engine you can make things like film and video, automotive design, architecture, and so on. So very cool. But right now we are interested in games, so clicking on here, and to the right you can see different templates that you can start with. So for example, you can start with a first-person template. If you're creating a first-person shooter, you can start with a third-person template, a vehicle template, and so on. But you can see there is not one for pixel art or a 2D game, and that is okay. All of these templates, you can actually create them yourself from scratch if you know what you're doing. So this is not very difficult to create. And what I usually do for my projects, for my courses, I usually start with a blank project because I want to teach you everything from scratch. And once you learn everything from scratch, you're able to create all of these templates yourself. So let us create a blank project. And for the coding, we are selecting Blueprint. The target platform is desktop. The quality preset is maximum. And for the starter content, if this is ticked for you, just untick it so we don't have anything here. We just want a blank project. And now select a name for the project. And for this one, we are creating some sort of a small version of Maple Story. So let us call it Maple Story like this. And you can, of course, select where you want to save it. But I just save it in the default location. So go ahead and click on Create. Once the project launches, this is what it looks like. And this is probably not open for you, so I'm going to quickly hide it. Your engine probably looks like this. And now that we have created our first project, let's move on to the next lesson. Before we start creating our 2D project, let's take a quick overview of this engine. The most important thing here in the middle is the viewport. And inside of the viewport, you can view your game visually. Remember, this is a 3D engine, so we are inside of a 3D world. This is the default startup map inside of Unreal Engine 5. And here inside of the viewport, you can navigate around. So holding your right mouse button, so holding down your right mouse button and clicking on W on the keyboard will move you forward. And holding the right mouse button down and clicking on S will move you backwards. Clicking on D will move you to the right, and clicking on A will move you to the left. So remember to hold the right mouse button, and you can see you can look around. You can move with W, D, S.
So if I press the left mouse button backward and forward, I get the same effect. And then yes, as he says, right mouse button forward, left, right, left, right, and back.
S and A. And this is what I use all the time. This is how I navigate around inside of the engine. But you can also hold the right mouse button and you can hold the left mouse button. So holding both buttons, you can see you can move around like this as well. Holding only the left mouse button, you can move forward and backwards like this. And holding the right mouse button and clicking E on the keyboard will move you up. And holding the right mouse button and clicking on Q will move you down on your keyboard. And as the last thing, you can...
Sorry, I thought you said U, and it's Q. So E for up, Q for down. Cool.
You can zoom in and out with your mouse wheel if you have that on your mouse, so you can zoom in and out. And again, the most basic control I use is holding the right mouse button and clicking on W, D, S, and A. So this is how I find it the easiest way to navigate around, but you're welcome to find your own style. That is okay. Next, we have a few buttons up here in the viewport. So clicking on the first one over here, you can, for example, show the frames per second, and you can see how many frames per second your game is running at right now. So enough about that right now. Let's remove the FPS. There's also something called a game view, and the game view hides all the icons inside of the game. So clicking on this one here, you can see the icon disappeared. The shortcut is G on the keyboard. So click on G, you can view and hide all of these icons. And this is pretty cool when you actually want to visualize your game without any icons. You can imagine if you have a large game, you can have a lot of icons inside of your level. So clicking on G, you can view your game without all of these icons. You can also go to the immersive mode down here. The shortcut is F11, and this will maximize the viewport. So clicking on G will hide the icons. clicking on F11 will minimize or maximize the viewport, and you can actually view the game here in full screen without any icons, and you can see what it looks like. So I will click on F11 again, and I will click on G again to view the icons. Next, we are inside of the perspective mode, but there are also something called orthographic views, so you can view the game from the left. So this is what it looks like from the left. If you zoom out, this is what it looks like from the top, and so on. And let's go back to the perspective mode. I just want to show you that this exists. So let's go back to the perspective mode. You have the view modes here. Right now we are watching it in the lit mode, so with the lighting. We can also watch it without any lighting. So clicking on unlit, this is what the game looks like without any lighting applied. You can view it in the wireframe mode. You can go back to the lit mode and so on. Next, very, very important, we have different tools that we use all the time. The first one is the select tool. And before I do this, I actually want to spawn something inside of my level. So let's go ahead and click on this quickly add to project button. Clicking on here, going to shapes, and I just want to add a simple cube. So click on this cube and it will add it to your viewport here in the level. The select tool is just a tool where you can select items, so self-explanatory. Clicking on the move tool, you can move items. So clicking on this box here or this cube, and you can see a pivot point appear, and you can drag from the different sides and you can move it around. Or you can click on this this white circle in the middle, and you can move it to all directions all at once. But if you want to move it to just one direction, you can drag from these arrows. Next, you have the rotate tool, and again, you can rotate this box by dragging on these angles here. And then you have the scale tool, where you can scale the box on different angles. And if you want to scale it uniformly, again, you can click here in the middle, and you can scale it to all sides at once. Now, it is very, very important to remember the shortcuts for these tools. So clicking on Q on the keyboard will select the select tool. Clicking on W will select the move tool. Clicking on E on the keyboard will select the rotate tool. And clicking on R will select the scale tool. And you can see this makes it a lot faster. Instead of clicking up here and moving it, clicking up here again and rotating it and so on. This takes forever. So clicking on W, for example, we can move it. Click on E, we can rotate it. Clicking on R, maybe you want to scale it up. Click on W to move it above the ground again. And you can see this is a lot faster to work with. So you don't have to click up here all the time, but remember that you can use the shortcuts Q, W, E, and R. So if you want a full document of all of these shortcuts, you can find them on my website. Next, we have the snapping tools. So this one is the move snapping. So you can see when I click on W for my move tool and I move my box, you can see it's not moving smoothly. It's snapping to something. And this is the snapping tool. If you disable it, so clicking on here, you can see now I can move it smoothly. If I enable it again, I am snapping now. You can also increase the snapping by clicking on this number and then increasing the number. Now you can see it snaps a lot more. And this is very useful. It takes forever. So clicking, you can use the shortcuts Q, W, E, and R. So if you want a full document of all of these shortcuts, you can find them on my website. Next, we have the snapping tools. So this one is the move snapping. So you can see when I click on W for my move tool, and I move my box, you can see it's not moving smoothly. It's snapping to something. And this is the snapping tool. If you disable it, so clicking on here, you can see now I can move it smoothly. If I enable it again, I am snapping now. You can also increase the snapping by clicking on this number and then increasing the number. Now you can see it snaps a lot more. And this is very useful to use if you want to place items like beside each other at a specific place. So another shortcut is you can hold Alt on your keyboard and you can click and drag, and this will basically copy paste the item just like that. And maybe you want to place items like this, like holding Alt, dragging, and placing him like this. This is very cool where you can use the snapping here. But if you want to beside each other at a specific place, so another shortcut is you can hold Alt on your keyboard and you can click and drag, and this will basically copy paste the item just like that. And maybe you want to place items like this, like holding Alt, dragging, and placing him like this. This is very cool where you can use the snapping here. But if you want to move something smoothly, you can just disable it, and maybe you want to specifically place it like this or whatever you're doing here. Next, we have the rotation snapping. So again, click on E. You can see it rotates every 10 degrees. You can disable it, and now you can rotate it smoothly. Again, you can also increase the snapping amount, for example, every 30 degrees, and now it snaps every 30 degrees. Now you can set them down again to normal, for example, 10 here, and it was on 10 here. And the same applies with the scaling. You can do the snapping for the scaling as well. The last thing we have is the camera speed. So you can see when I move my camera in the viewport, let's say you have this large open world, and it will take forever for me to move all the way over there. This is how you can increase the camera speed. So for example, you can put it to 8. You can see now I can move a lot faster in my world, and this is very useful to use once you have a large world, but I doubt that we will use that much for our 2D game because we don't really have that large of a world. But in a 2D game, maybe you want to focus on something very small, and here it is very useful to reduce the camera speed to something very slow, because maybe sometimes in 2D games you're looking at very small details, and this is good to set it to very slow so you can actually move close to items. Okay, enough about the viewport. This was the most important thing inside of the engine. This is where you can see the game. Next, we have the details panel, and inside of here you can view different details about items you have selected in the viewport. So you can see when I select the ground down here, I get different details. When I select this cube, I get different details, and details such as location, where is this cube located inside of my world, what is the rotation of this cube, what is the scale. And remember, we scaled this cube, so I'm just going to increase my camera speed a little bit again. So this cube here, remember, we scaled it up and down. And if you want to reset it, you can just come down here to the scale in the details panel, and you can write 1, 1, 1, just like that. And now we are back at what this cube was. So it was at the scale of 1, 1, 1. If you have rotated it, you can see we have rotated the cube by 10 degrees in the z-axis, and you can see what axis it is by holding the mouse over it. So the red one is the x-axis, and the green is the y-axis, and the z is the blue one. So the blue one up here is the z, the x is this red arrow, and the green one here is the y-axis. Again, you can reset the rotation by writing 0, 0, 0, and now we have reset the rotation. And if you want to place the cube at a specific location, you can edit the location here. You can see the location edits when you move this cube like this in the viewport. Just look here, it edits the Y value now. But if you want to place it specifically at 1000, you can also just write 1000 like this, and you can see the cube has been placed specifically at 1000. So very useful to use the details panel over here if you have specific numbers you want the items to be in. And if you scroll down, you can see all of these different details that you can view and edit about this item that you have selected. So don't worry about all of these details for now. We are going to work with all of this later in the project. Up here in the world outliner, you can see what you have currently inside of your level. So right now, if you click on this cube, for example, you can see it also selects it inside of the outliner. If you select this cube over here, it selects it automatically inside of the outliner. You can also select items by clicking out here in the outliner, and I use this mostly when I want to find a specific item, and I click on that item. For example, the direction light is the sunlight, and when I click on it, I can see that it is down here with all of the other icons. So very, very basic. The world outliner displays all the items that you currently have inside of your level. So if I click on this cube and I click on delete on my keyboard, I click on this cube also, and I click delete on my keyboard, you can see they disappear from the world outliner because you don't have them anymore inside of the world. Up here we have the toolbar with the basic buttons. So clicking on the file, you can create a new level. You can also save the project, and you can create a new project. Inside of the project settings, you can edit settings inside of this project. So for example, you can edit the startup icon for this project. You can write a company name. You can write a support contact email. So for example, when you release the game on Steam, people know who to contact if they have bugs inside of the game or if they actually want to contact you. You can also add a movie. So, you know, when you open a game, you have that startup movie, maybe 5 seconds. You can actually add one inside of here. So a lot of things that you can edit here for this project specifically. So the editor preferences are settings for your editor, and the project settings are settings specifically for this project, the MapleStory project we are creating right now. And then we have plugins, and we won't work with that right now, so don't worry about this. Next, inside of window, you can open multiple windows. This is very useful if you have multiple monitors. For example, we can go to viewport and click on viewport 2, and this opens a second viewport here. And you can see here, this viewport, this is very useful. I can view my game in full screen, and I can put this inside of my other monitor. And now I can view this game here, and on my second monitor I have this viewport that I have open all the time. Don't worry about all of this, we won't touch this until later in the project. And at the end, inside of the help, you can view the documentation for Unreal Engine 5. I think it's a bit lacking right now and hard to understand, but you can take a look if you want to. Down here in the toolbar, you have different tools that you can switch between. For example, you can create landscapes, you can create foliage such as grass and trees and so on. But we don't really want to touch any of these tools because remember, we are creating a 2D game and not a 3D game. So let's skip these tools for now. And for this button, you can add different items. We added the sphere, or the cube actually, the cube inside of here. But you can also add other items such as lighting. And you can add cinematics, so cameras, you can add volumes, visual effects, and we will add some things inside of here. But again, remember, we are creating a 2D game, so we won't be using all of these lighting. But I would say the cool thing about creating a 2D game inside of a 3D engine is you can imagine you can create a 2D game with 3D lighting effects. There are some cool things that you can do inside of a 3D engine when you create 2D games. Over here are the blueprints. This is the coding, and we will work with this later, so don't worry about that. And over here you can click on the play button to play the game. And right now we don't really have much going on, so there is not much to see. Clicking on escape will quit the play game mode. And as the last thing, what I want to show you is the content browser. And this is where all the files that we will be importing will be. So if you go down here to the left, you have something called a content drawer. So clicking on that button, this window will appear. Inside of this content drawer, all of the items that we import will be inside of here. So all of the characters we have, all of the music, all of the visual effects, all of the files will be down here in the content browser. And right now you can see you have to click down here to have this open. And I think for me it's a bit annoying because when I click on something on the viewport, this will disappear. Some people think this is cool, and that all depends on the style. But
so maybe a question for any of you guys watching that already has this experience and you're watching this for a reference. The one thing I would need to know as I'm developing this game is that I will need multiple people to have access to these files and access to the game. So it's probably going to come out later in this video, but it's just certainly a question I have right now, is that we need multiple people, maybe on a server that has that's got access to what I've got access to here.
I think for me it's a bit annoying that it disappears all the time when I click on something over here. And also for the course, I think it will be great to have this up all the time. So I am going to click on Duck in Layout. This is also how it was in Unreal Engine 4. And this will stay up all the time even though I click on things over here. And I prefer to have this up all the time so I can see my files. Inside of the content browser, you can click on this add button and you can add different things. For example, we can add a blueprint class, and this is the programming that we will be doing later on. You can also add things about the animation, things about blueprints, foliage, effects, user interfaces for the UI. And this might look overwhelming because you have so many things that you can add, but you're only going to use, I would say, about 25% of all of this. So don't worry about all of these buttons. You will not be using all of it. And I would say that you should just start learning the basics and just move on from there and make it easier for yourself. Here in the Paper 2D, this is what we will be working with. So this is the pixel art, the 2D game that we will be working with. You can also add items inside of the content browser by right-clicking here, so you can see the same thing. I usually never click on this button. I just right-click over here to the right. You can also add different folders. So
I'm just going to check that option just so I know. I would do what he says. I would go to the main body here and right-click Paper 2D. I do just want to play around with this. Sprite assets. Maple Boy. I don't know what I'm doing.
By right-clicking here, and at the top you can click new folder and you can make new folders. And I'm just going to delete this one, clicking delete on my keyboard for now. And if you want to, you can go ahead and click on this cube, delete it, delete this one as well. Now we know the basics of this engine and how it's built up, so it's a lot easier for us to work with our project. To create a new level, let's first create a folder. So over here in the content folder, let's right click and click on new folder. And let us just call it maps. Inside of this maps folder over here to the right, you can right click and then you can click on level. Now let's call this one, I like to give all of my files that I create a prefix. So I'm just going to call it map to begin with. And this makes it easier once you have a lot of files. You can actually search for them a lot easier by writing the prefix. So calling it map, and let's just call it main. I just call it the main map. I don't know what name I want to give it right now. So let's just call it main map. And up here, by the way, you can save all, so save everything. And if you have done edits inside of this level, so before we added cubes, so if I add a cube and delete it, and you're trying to save, it asks you to save this map here because you have done edits. And actually we don't really want to save this map because we're not going to use this default map. So I'm going to double click on my new map that I created. It's going to ask me to save this level here. I am going to click on don't save. Now I am inside of my new level, and you can see here in my outliner, world outliner, you don't really have anything because you don't have anything inside of this level right now. Now before we end this video, let's set this level as our default map. So going to edit, and inside of project settings, you can click on maps and modes, and here you can see the editor startup map is currently that default open world map. Clicking on here and changing it to our map that we created, both the startup map and also the default game map, just like that. Now when you close it, and let's just click file and save everything. Now when you close the engine and open it again, it will default open on this level. Let us now import the environment assets that we will be using in the future lessons. So over here, I'm going to right click in the content folder again and make a new folder. Let's call this one assets. Inside of this assets folder, I'm going to right click and make a new folder, and let's call this one environments. Let's call this one, I'm going to right click and make a new folder. And let's call this one environments. Okay, so it's very good to stay organized inside of your project, because once the project becomes large, it will be a pain to navigate around if you don't know where the files are located. So inside of this environment folder, I'm going to click on it. We want to import our files. I have given you this course materials. So inside of the course materials, if you can go inside of the environment folder, inside of here, I have provided you some of the files. There may be more files than what you see here. I'm just putting these files inside of this folder as I go. So what I want you to import is just this one, the T Dragon Road, and the one called T Dragon Road BG for background. So these two here, you can just click and drag and place them inside of the environment folder. Remember, if your files is still in a WAR or zip format, you can't drag directly from a zip folder inside of here. You have to extract those files to your desktop maybe, or whatever location you want to, and then you can just like a normal folder here, drag them inside of the project. Okay, when you're inside of the project here, you can see we have our two textures, and when you click on them, so for example, I click on this BG one, it opens on my second monitor. This is the one that we will be using. Now this one might have, you can see when I zoom in, it's blurred. It's not really pixel art. And as you know, pixel art is not blurred like this. It's very clear pixels that we want. And this is what we are achieving right now, because you are again inside of a 3D engine, and the 3D engine blurs it out to make everything look good. But in the case of a 2D game, we don't really want it to blur out. This is very easy. Just click on both of them. So clicking on this one, holding Control, clicking on the second one, I can right click, go to Sprite Actions and say Apply Paper 2D Settings. And this will basically remove that blur effect. So when I go back here and I zoom in, you can see the blur effect is gone now, and you can see every single pixel. And now let's click on File and Save All, and that was it for this video. So very important to take from this video, when you import pixel art files, remember to right click, go to Sprite Actions and apply Paper 2D Settings to remove that blur effect that the engine adds by default. Now that we have our assets ready, we are ready to create a tile set. And in the next video, we are going to create something called a tile map. So the difference between a tile set and a tile map is the tile set, you can imagine it if you are painting, the tile set are your colors, and the tile map is your canvas. So you need tile sets to create a tile map. So let's create the tile sets, the colors that you're actually wanting to paint with on the tile map that we create later on. So let's right click this first one here. These are the tiles. Let us right click it. Let's go to Sprite Action and let's click Create Tile Set. And what I'm going to rename it, I usually delete that tile set in the end here, and I just call it TS for tile set. And let's do the same thing here with the background. Go to Sprite Actions and create tile set. Sets, and again let's rename those to TS from the beginning. So now we have two tile sets. Let's go in the first one here, our tiles. So now we can see these are the tiles, and we can't do much here inside of a tile set. Remember, the tile set, we only created it so we can actually use those tiles to paint on our tile map. And now you can click on these different tiles and you can actually see the tiles. When you click on them, they will be displayed here to the right. So you can view the tile and what it looks like. But the size is not correct. You can see here the tile size to the right. You have to set that to 30 pixels by 30 pixels because I know it's 30 pixels. I composed them inside of Photoshop, so I put them together here in one texture. So I know that the tile size is 30 pixels by 30 pixels. When you download things from the internet, they usually specify how large the tiles are. So this is where you set them. So 30 by 30, now this is correct, and when you click on the tiles, you can see this is what they look like. And we will use this later to paint on our tile map. Let's close this down and let's go over to the tile set for the background. The tile size is also 30 by 30, so we have to change this to 30 by 30 pixels. So this was the important thing. We set our tile size inside of this tile set. And now that we have those tile sets, let me actually right click inside of this folder, make a new one called textures. And I want to place this texture inside of my textures because we're not really going to need this anymore. Don't because we're not really going to need this anymore. Don't delete it because these are actually derived from this texture. Remember, we right clicked and created a tile set, but I just put them inside of textures because then we don't really have to see it again. Also, the same thing with this background one, move it inside of this folder.
So I didn't actually see what it did, and I don't have the option to move. Let me have a look. Clicking and dragging. Nope. Right click and... Nope, I didn't see what he did. Nope. So I just had to click both and move here, but it wasn't doing it on a singular item.
And we only need to see these tile sets. So let's click on File, Save All, and let's move on. We can now right click on our tile set. And when we right click, you can see here you have the option to create a tile map. So let's create a tile map. And again, I'm going to delete that map here at the end that it puts. And I'm just going to call it TM for tile map as a... that map here at the end that it put in our tile set. And when we right click, you can see here you have the...
It's not giving me that option to create tile map when I right click. Edit, duplicate. Let's see if I've got those options. Yeah, I've got edit, duplicate, create spirits. Create tile set. No, that wasn't it. Create tiles. I'm wondering how old this version is.
The option to create a tile map. So
texture. Edit. Okay, I'm going to have to go on a little bit further in the video and see if I can kind of manufacture what he's doing.
well, let's create a tile map. And again, I'm going to delete that map here at the end that it puts. And I'm just going to call it TM for tile map as a prefix. And you can double click the tile map to get inside of here. Here, before I do anything, to the right, remember you have to set the tile width.
So I'm going to create it as material and see if that gets me anywhere. Create as material. Tile map. So material is going to be like a rock surface or something.
And tile height to 30 by 30.
So if I go to the asset and drag, nope, that don't work.
So just make sure this is correct. And this is just to set it the same as this one. So whatever you set here inside of the tile set, you have to set the same thing inside of the tile map. As for the map width and height, you can choose how large your map should be. So how wide should your map be? And for this one, I think I'm going to go with 60 in the width and 40 in the height. So this is the map that we will be working in. To the left, you can see the tile set. So right now, the active tile set is this one, the Dragon Road, where we have our tiles. And you can click anywhere here, select something. And when you select it here on the left, now you have it here as a brush inside of your tile map. So you can click here, and you can see when you click, you paint it on your tile map. Okay, and there isn't a quick way to delete it. You have to delete it one by one. So clicking on E to choose the eraser, and you can also click on up here the paint, eraser, and fill. So clicking on E to choose the eraser, you can erase those, and clicking on B on the keyboard to choose the paintbrush. So B for the paintbrush, and clicking on E to erase these brushes again. So whatever you select here to the left, you can now paint it here on the tile map. And inside of the tile map, it consists of layers. So if you have worked inside...
So now I definitely need to find this tile map. So I'm going to go and navigate Unreal Engine, see if I can find it, and I'll come back to the video. Kind of 30 seconds of navigating, I did realise I'd gone a folder too deep. So I was in textures again. I remember I just dragged those over to textures. So I'm back to environments, and then if I right click on TS Dragon, I can create tile map. And then, just do exactly what he says. Delete, delete, delete. 30 by 30, that's right. Whee. And then I can erase. Perfect. Tile grid. 30 by 30. Boom. Right. And then same mouse button, so I can right click and navigate, and I can zoom in on the mouse, the roller, mouse wheel. Okay.
Let's create a tile map, and again you have to set the same thing inside of the tile map. As for the map width and height, you can choose how large your map should be, so how wide should your map be. And for this one, I think I'm going to go with 60 in the width and 40 in the height. So this is the map that we will be working in. To the left, you can see the tile set. So right now, the active tile set is this one, the Dragon Road, where we have our tiles. And you can click anywhere here, select something. And when you select it here on the left, now you click here and clicking on E. So clicking on B on the keyboard to choose the paintbrush to erase these brushes here on the tile. So if you have worked inside of Photoshop, you know what this is. If you want to change the name of a layer, you can click on F2 on the keyboard. You can right click and change the name, but I usually click on F2 to rename things. So clicking on F2, and for example, I can call it the base layer. I can make a new layer clicking on this button.
Yeah, I'm old school, so I right click. Actually, am I new school? I right click and just rename base.
I can, for example, rename this to background. In the base layer, if you have this selected, let's just paint some random tiles here. Let's pretend that these are the ground tiles that we have. I can now go to the background, and let's say I want to paint the background. And let's say just randomly my background is this. I can paint this. You can see it's now on the foreground because this is how layers work. So the front one will be in the front. So if you want this to be the background, you have to put it beneath the base layer. So click on the background. You can click on this arrow. It says send backward, and it will put it backwards here. And now whatever you paint, you can see you can't paint on top of these because this is your background now. And when you click on the base layer now and you paint more, you can see you can paint in front of your background, because remember, this is the background. And these are two separate layers. So if you click on the eye here on the base layer, you can see this is the background. You can also hide the background and so on. So very, very useful. We will be using those to paint our map. And this is basically it for the tile map. So nothing complex. We have some tiles. We can draw our map here and make it look awesome. And we can use those layers to paint it. So the background, the base, we maybe have a foreground and so on. Remember to set the width and height of your map as you wish. I want mine to be 60 by 40. And the tile would have to be 30 by 30 because those tiles are 30 by 30 pixels. You can just delete the background. So click up here, clicking delete on my keyboard. It crashed my my engine. Let me just restart it. It happens sometimes with Unreal Engine. So sometimes it just crashes randomly. So let me get back to my tile set.
Just in case.
And you can see it already deleted it. So this happens sometimes with Unreal Engine. I have to recreate it. So creating the tile map. I'm just going to create the whole thing again. Okay, now I am back where I'm at. I have set my settings here and we are back. So let's move on to the next lesson and let's design the environment.
So guys, I'm actually going to leave it there. That's only kind of 20-25 minutes in, and it's very basic stuff. I definitely think this is easy to pick up, as you've seen. And when it comes to base layers and layers, I'm using Photoshop all the time. I'm very good at kind of picking up things like this. So this is kind of stage 1 of building a 2D game. So as it says on the screen, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my seat. Know that they ride or die.